new episode of our podcast, Logistics Sessions, the podcast. Today we have a very special guest, Tad Blackburn. He works at Estes Express. He's currently the Vice President of Administration for Estes Express. So, Tad, welcome to our podcast. Thank you so much for joining us.
Stephanie, thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Well, I had the chance to review your bio, and you've had a great career with Estes Express. I understand you started working in 1999 and you started as a pricing analyst. During that time, you have been a manager and director of the pricing department, and the primary responsibility was for weight and research, rating, and freight bill dispute resolution. And in his current role since 2017, where you are the vice president or of administration, you are responsible for all the administrative order to cash functions, and those include freight bill dispute resolution, invoicing, and weight and research, among others. So like I said, what a great career. I don't know if I'm missing something.
No, you hit the high points. One thing of note, I probably priced your account many years ago, as I was responsible for the Florida and Georgia accounts many years ago when I was in pricing. So it's coming full circle.
Yeah. Absolutely. So Tad, you are a very special guest for us today, as we are going to talk about invoice surprises. And the LTL industry is really common to get higher invoices than what you were expecting, get higher rates than what you were quoted initially. And that's basically what we're going to talk about today.
Okay.
So before we even get into anything, probably the one question that everybody has in their mind today is about the state of the industry. And you're an expert, so I would like to have your thoughts on this. It's been some challenging 16 months now. Can you share some thoughts about what's going on in the industry right now?
Yeah, the industry across the board, transportation, you're seeing this in various supply chains, new automotive manufacturing, computer manufacturing. There's shortages everywhere. And transportation and LTL transportation is not exempt from that. And so we are seeing just really tight capacity. There's very tight capacity in LTL, very tight capacity in the truckload market, which, typically when truckload gets very tight, some of that volume bleeds over into the LTL space. And so truckload is very tight, rail is tight. It's just, I hate to use kind of the adjectives that we've used over the past year, with the pandemic, but it's just unprecedented and almost seems like a new normal in a way. And so, yeah, it's been challenging for us as a LTL trucking company to try to adapt to the challenges, and also an evolving marketplace. We've seen an explosion in residential deliveries, through the pandemic, and that's kind of continued into 2021 as the pandemic is easing a bit. So we've seen that change in kind of the market, and that's been a challenge in and of itself as well.
Absolutely. And it has been a challenge for everyone in the industry, like you mentioned. So like you said, volumes of freight are skyrocketing right now. Everybody's talking about capacity and how constrained it is. Is there any connection between this and the way detention charges are being applied nowadays?
Absolutely. We're looking at driver shortages across the industry and record freight volumes. So we need to become more and more efficient because we just can't add the capacity in terms of number of drivers and even in equipment. Estes is what I like to think of as kind of an equipment-rich company, and we're seeing, trailer shortages in some spots just because of all the additional capacity, and the trailer manufacturers are not able to manufacture trailers as quickly as the industry needs them. So what we're looking at is, getting the most out of a constrained resource, which is our drivers. And so, whereas in the past, if a delivery took a little bit longer, the terminal might not, report that as being a long delivery and subject to detention charges. But what we're really trying to do is to get our customers to get us in and out as quickly as possible, so we can get more stops per driver and help process the volumes that we have. So it's not a coincidence that you're probably seeing more detention charges, consignees where you may have a drop trailer, where we're looking to pick those up, and we'll assess storage charges if consignees are holding on to trailers. And and I do feel for some of the consignees in their warehouses as they're facing staffing shortages and record volumes and things like that. So, but surely there is a correlation between the record volumes and the increased assessment of detention and storage charges.
Right, because I started off my career working in operations, and I don't know, 4 years ago, it wasn't that common to have an extra charge, to have a detention charge. And now I'm seeing that every day. It's a daily practice. And explain us a little bit how serious it is for a carrier to have a driver waiting to be loaded or unloaded.
Yeah, if a driver is sitting idle at a customer's location, that means that they cannot pick up or deliver shipments for other customers, and so that reduces and they only have a certain number of hours that they can drive in a day, and so you're constrained by that. And if they're just sitting idle waiting to be loaded or unloaded, that's dead time that is not being productive for anyone. And so that really reduces the number of delivery stops they can make, the number of and then that cascades over into pickup stops. So we need more drivers to service the available amount of freight within the terminal. And drivers are hard to add, and trailers are hard to find, and tractors are hard to find as well. So we need our drivers to be as efficient as possible in order for the drivers to be able to pick up and deliver the most amount of freight that they physically can.
Right. So we're talking about efficiency. All LTL carriers must be very efficient with their operation. So what other factors besides having a driver waiting to be loaded or unloaded, what other factors do you feel affect a carrier's operation the most?
Yeah, I'll tell you one that on the surface it seems very innocuous, is an appointment. Customers that require appointments. On the surface it sounds like, okay, what's the big deal about making a phone call to deliver at a certain time, or pick up at a certain time, and really there's a whole host of additional steps that a carrier must take and to affect an appointment. So when, in the case of a delivery appointment, the shipment comes into the terminal from the line haul unit, then the delivering terminal has to take that shipment and set it aside somewhere. Because if you can't make that appointment for, say, that day, it can't go out on a delivery truck. So we have to hold that shipment. Once, let's say the appointment is for the following day, then we have to rehandle that shipment again to load that in a delivery truck to send it out. So there's additional handling costs. And every time you touch a piece of freight, you run the risk of damaging it. So you also have that from the additional rehandles. And then within the delivery route, we like to string our routes together in the most logical fashion, where you have stop 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's sequential, and it minimizes the drive time and things like that. But if you have an appointment, we have to reorganize the route to make sure that we are at this specific customer's place at a specific time. Therefore, it makes our delivery routes more efficient as well. So you can see that something as simple as an appointment has many ripple effects the carrier and how we have to service that customer and handle that freight.
And I'm really glad you explained that part, because in most of the cases, the comments that we get is of an appointment. It's usually see as just it's somebody just picking up the phone and making a phone call, and that's not it. I mean, there's a whole process behind it, which you already explained, and that's why these might incur in extra costs for the carrier and extra fees for shippers or final customers. So the idea with this episode is for us to explain accessorials and extra charges, and for our customers to understand that from a carrier's perspective. So can you tell us a little bit about how the shipping process works, where extra costs can be could be incurred by the carrier, resulting in extra charges for the final customer?
There's a couple things. Number one, the description of what is being shipped and the classification of that. If we don't have a proper NMFC item number and class, as a carrier, we will generally inspect those, and inspections due to dimensioners that is greatly increased as the dimensioner technology has become more affordable. Most carriers are utilizing that technology now, so we're inspecting far more shipments than we ever did before. And so if the freight is not shipped with the proper NMFC class, in many cases that is going to and it's inspected and found to be incorrect, it could change that invoice amount, and so that could be a surprise. So that's the first opportunity. The next one is accessorial services. If we have limited access accessorials, such as schools, churches, farms, things of that nature, if the shipper wasn't expecting that or didn't take that into account, those charges will be added to a bill. And the reason for those are that those types of customer consignee locations generally fall outside of commercial areas. So we're having some out of route miles, and they're not really accustomed to shipping and receiving freight in most cases. There are some exceptions, but in most cases, schools, a high school doesn't have a loading dock, and in a church doesn't have normal receiving hours and things like that. So there's also a charge for that. Because of the inefficiencies of going out of route, and typically the deliveries take a little bit longer. Additionally, some of those locations we have to use different equipment than we normally would on a commercial P&D route. So that could be having to deliver on a pup or even a straight truck, or we need a lift gate or something like that. So those are things that if the shipper isn't taking that into account when estimating the freight charges, that could be a surprise. So the real key to that is for the shipper to know their customers and know, is it a limited, or typically a non-commercial limited access type delivery? Are they going to need a lift gate? Do they have a loading dock? Are they going to need, if they don't, are they going to require an inside delivery, or are they okay with the shipment being dropped, right on the sidewalk, for instance? So those are some of the things that the shippers can do to ask questions of their consignees, and so they can obtain the most accurate estimate for those freight charges that they can.
Okay, so and one of the comments that we get the most is usually, we didn't authorize it. That's the response we get. So can you explain us a little bit of why an LTL carrier cannot afford to wait for an authorization so they can deliver a shipment with a lift gate, or so they can perform an inside delivery, for example?
Yeah, absolutely. And what happens generally in the case of an inside delivery, we get to the consignee's location and they say, "Hey, I need you to bring it, through the front door into the storeroom." And right there, when the driver is there, for them to have to stop, to call the terminal, to call you, to call the shipper.
Right.
You see, the driver, we just can't afford for that driver to hold up. And especially with freight volumes as heavy as they are, he needs to be able to get in, get out, and get
Right.
on to the next stop. So that communication is very unwieldy, and it's just not something we could do on a routine basis, or we would be just sitting there with idle time. And if we were to do that, we would have to increase the charges so much that it's just not worth it, because we have to pay for that driver sitting there doing nothing.
Right. Right. Then we'll have detention. If the authorization is not received, then a redelivery will be charged. So yeah, it'll be a cascade of full extra charges and nobody wants that.
Correct.
Right. So when talking about extra charges, in some cases, we don't see them being updated on the invoices in a timely manner. Sometimes LTL carriers can take a few days to update this on their system. Can you tell us why this might be happening, and how can we use, for example, technology so we can improve with this process?
Yeah, sure. I think it's going to vary by carrier, kind of when and how these charges get on. In some cases, you could have a very manual process where the driver indicates the service was performed on the delivery receipt, and then when he or she gets back to the terminal that night, we'll hand in all of the paperwork, and then a clerk will take that paperwork and then process it to close out the delivery, and then add any accessorial charges. So that there could be a delay in some of that. I think that for one thing carriers are doing more of are utilizing services to identify limited access points. There are several data services out there that can do that. So we're actually, and that actually helps with our delivery planning and things as well. So we're getting some of those charges on there earlier. Probably what you can do to get earlier notification when that information exists in the carrier systems is to ask, can you send me a report of, say, the previous day's shipments that had accessorials added? And in most cases, carriers can provide that information to you. There are certain accessorials where it's going to be impossible. Let's say storage, but because we don't know until we can actually make that delivery what that storage charge is going to be. We can just it's going to be X dollars per day or whatever. But there's certain things like that. But I think in a lot of cases you can ask your carriers for reports, and that will help get the information to you much faster than waiting on an invoice or having to set something up where you're trying to check all the shipments you may have for a carrier.
Okay. Yeah, I think that'll be a great tool for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Tad. If I'm a shipper and I'm constantly getting higher invoices than what I was expecting, what would be your advice? What tips can you give me so that stops happening?
Yeah, I think typically if you're shipping the same things and the same things are being changed, that probably means that we have a little bit of a disconnect between what is being shipped and what is being declared on the bill of lading and what the carrier is finding that to be. And so that that could warrant a conversation, and the carrier could say, okay, this is why we feel this is incorrect. And hopefully that resolves that, and the customer can see kind of where the carrier is coming from and why this may be correct. If there's still a disagreement, of course, we can go to NMFTA to get an opinion on to make sure that the carrier is in fact correct on the classification. We can do that. If things that happen sporadically, carriers can make mistakes. So in those cases, but a carrier is going to have whatever their process is for dispute management. At Estes, we we have a way where the customer can go directly on our website and enter a dispute on a shipment if a charge is being disputed, or if they sign in their MyEstes account, they can also enter disputes and also back a spreadsheet of disputes directly into our system. And so that's one way to get with the carrier. One thing I would say is, provide some information as to why you think a charge is incorrect. And that really really explain it, and that really helps those who are reviewing these cases to really look at the correct information, look at it in totality, and make the best decision they can with the information available.
Okay, and now that you're talking about dispute management, what would be the supporting documents that you believe a customer needs to provide when entering a billing dispute with a carrier?
Sure. Yeah, I think if you're looking at something where, let's say it's a residential, and the lines get really blurry between residential and commercial these days, as more and more people are operating businesses out of their homes, and so if you have kind of like a website or something like that where you can screenshot or give a web address that says, hey, this is a business, that's helpful. If you're looking at the classification of something, any information, typically manufacturer specs or something like that, a website is very helpful. To get the correct classification, a lot of it, look at how it's marketed, what its function is, what it's made of, things like that. So information that can be provided in that fashion really helps the carrier make the best decision possible.
And for, let's say, if I want to dispute a weight increase or a reclassification, what do you feel needs to be provided to make sure our dispute is going to be taken into account?
Yeah, I would say just information, any marketing literature, and typically the great thing about the internet is, you can pull this specs from the internet of what the commodity is, what the dimensions are, what it weighs. But one word of caution in that is that we need to make sure that we're talking about, the shipping weight and the shipping dimensions, because in some cases you'll get commodities, you'll have the actual commodity dimensions and weight, and that doesn't take into account the packaging, the pallet, if it's crated or anything like that. Typically those don't take that into account.
Okay. And Tad, so technology today is more important than ever, I believe. Everyone is implementing RPA processes. Everyone is using technology to advance and to be able to support all the work that we have nowadays. How do you feel technology and innovation can help reducing invoice surprises?
I'll tell you, I think one of the biggest things that we can do, and I think as an industry we're really working to increase that, is electronic bill of lading. And so whether that be through EDI or APIs, that's something that is it can be transformational, because you take out the scanning of the bill of lading, which may not be the best. You take the human intervention out of reading something from a scanned image and entering that in a computer system. And so by doing that, the customer can make sure that all of the reference numbers that are required are provided to the carrier, so we can provide that back, and that can match up within the customer's payable system, and take out the human error element, and allows us to bill much faster, because in that case, it's something that we have the electronic bill of lading. As soon as we make that pickup and associate that pickup with that electronic bill of lading, the shipment's completely billed. So then the customer is going to have visibility to that shipment immediately, and start whatever their tracking and tracing processes are. And that, I feel, is one of the biggest things that we can do is together to make things easier for both the customer and the carrier.
Okay. Yeah, I believe implementing new technologies is really important, so we can continue with our work and with the pace that we're having nowadays. We talked when we started about the state of the industry. What do you think holds for the future for the LTL industry? I mean, how long do you think this capacity situation is going to stand for?
Well, listening to the economists and what those in the industry are looking at, there doesn't really seem to be any slowdown this year. I think that this year capacity is going to remain tight. Perhaps next year there'll be some easing, but right now it's kind of a perfect storm of supply chain disruptions, manufacturing disruptions, pent-up demand, and things, and a red hot economy. So I think as long as the economy stays red hot, you're going to see these shortages persist. And so, as an industry, we're having to try to adapt to it, and it is making us more efficient. And that's just something that and if we look down the road, they're projecting driver shortages to worsen as more people are exiting the driving profession that are coming in. And so, we as carriers are going to have to do more with less. So we're having to become more efficient, and I don't see that stopping anytime soon.
Wow. So a lot of patience is needed in this industry.
Yes, it's certainly been something to see. That's
yeah.
And I know it's been painful for both for the customers as well, because transit times have suffered. And the things when carriers get busy, damage claims increase, lost freight increases, and so it's been trying for everyone involved. And I think we're all hoping that we're going to find some equilibrium very, very soon.
Right. Absolutely. Well, Tad, it was an honor to have you here in this episode. Thank you so much for sharing all the knowledge that you have and all your insights. I hope we can have you in one of our next episodes. Thank you so much, and you have a great day. Take care, and we'll continue working.
Okay. Thanks for having me. Have a great day.
Absolutely. Thank you.